Who believed in you before you believed in yourself? For me, it was the women who saw something in me when I was just starting out. 20 years and 5 businesses later, I'm still here because they lifted me up when I needed it most. I'm Tania Gomez, and this is She Shapes Tomorrow, brought to you by Tania Gomez Consulting and Kismet, proudly sponsored by SN Services. Every episode, we sit down with women who are changing lives, building communities, and raising up the next generation. Women who'll remind you what's possible when we stop trying to do it alone. This year's International Women's Day theme is Give to Gain, and these stories will show you exactly what that looks like. Let's get into it. Welcome to She Shapes Tomorrow, an International Women's Day podcast. I'm your host, Tania Gomez, and today I'm joined by the amazing Laura Cowell. Laura is the Group CEO of Tender Loving Care. From growing up in foster care, instability and violence, to becoming a mum at 17, to leading major community organisations and becoming the first female president of the Sutherland Shire Football Association in almost its 70-year history. Laura's story is one of grit, representation and radical kindness. She now leads national movements across aged care, disability, employment pathways and rare disease advocacy, creating safer, kinder and more connected communities for people who have been overlooked or underestimated. Welcome, Laura. That's quite an introduction.
Thank you, Tania. It is. You kind of wrap it up in one paragraph like that and you sort of sit there and think, oh yeah, that's actually me.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I wanted to jump in first about talking about how you grew up and I guess moments that really shaped who you are as a leader today. And you've been quite open about growing up in foster care, instability and violence. How did those early years shape your understanding of resilience, belonging and leadership?
Yeah, Tania, I think it's really interesting about when you think back to your early years, everything that happens to you shapes you for your future. And to me, I chose to be resilient, and being in the chaos that is foster care, all that instability and violence that you talked about, you learn pretty young that there's really no one else who's going to save you. You learn that when someone also gives you like a small moment of kindness, that actually can change the trajectory of your life. And so I grew up with that sense of like leading with intention of creating belonging for others, because I felt like I had grown up without that sense of belonging. I really do know what it feels like to be overlooked and not seen, and feel like I'm not heard. So I want to make sure that I lend my voice to others so that they can be heard. And yeah, so I think with my leadership, it was shaped by years of what I grew up with, and not in spite of them, but because of them, I am who I am today.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's funny because some people have very tough beginnings and they're the opposite, right? They learn anger and they learn to bully because they were bullied. And it's almost like you did a flip. You went, okay, this is what I don't like. This is who I don't want to be. And instead, I'm going to be the opposite. I'm going to intentionally make people feel like they belong because I didn't feel that way. So it's almost a superpower, really, to use that pain and turn it into something that is so inclusive and warm.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like if we choose to intentionally give kindness, that you will be able to get through all of the chaos that life throws at us, because you are making sure that you kind of don't impact on others in the way that you were impacted on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a bit of a turbulent childhood, quite a chaotic childhood, but I am how I am. I'm, overly controlling and overly systematic and overly about process and system because I had so much chaos. And I learned that, similar to you, I was the only one that I could rely on. And to make things easier, I would then have processes on how to do things so that it made it less daunting, I suppose, and gave me a sense of control in all of the upheaval and the chaos. So I think I took on chaos and saw that the answer to chaos was structure, and you took on being underestimated and overlooked and saw that as your opportunity. So it's really interesting how it shapes you, I suppose, as a person into the future.
Yeah, exactly. And Tania, you're amazing, and we all need people like you. So I think it's really, being grateful to what we learn throughout our lives, and instead of using it and doing a repeat cycle, I think changing that and channeling it into goodness and impact like you have is something that the world needs, so that we don't keep doing it to others.
Yeah, absolutely. You then became a mum at 17, which was a huge turning point for you. What did early motherhood teach you about responsibility, empathy, and I guess breaking that cycle?
Yeah, look, becoming a mum at 17 was like, it forced me to grow up. I was already a child who potentially was at risk of going in different areas within my life. I could have, chosen a pathway that was just not going to be a positive one. And, every choice started to matter even more so. It was magnified, not just for me, but for someone who depended on me completely, which was my little baby girl. It taught me that responsibility in like such a purest sense, the kind that comes from like, before your ambition, before your career, before any titles, before anything else, it's this little child. You don't want them to experience what you've experienced. And it gave me this empathy where you can't go through something like having this child and my chaos without developing this really deep awareness of how hard life can actually be for people. And I think when I think about, back to my motherhood, you kind of go, in the moment, you're just living and existing and trying to look after a little human. But when you go back, my biggest lesson was that you can really break those cycles of what was occurring in my family life didn't occur in my daughter's life, and you can choose to be different. You can build a life that's not, I never saw before in my life, because I believed, being a mum didn't limit me. It kind of anchored me to something in the future.
I love that. It's really beautiful. I didn't know that my life was chaotic until I started working with children and working in their homes as a nanny and a babysitter. And I babysat and nannied for lots of beautiful, beautiful families who didn't have houses were nothing like mine. And I remember sitting in this beautiful house with this loving, nurturing family, and I was probably 20, I think. And it dawned on me in that moment that, hang on, my childhood isn't the norm. And that actually, at first I was a little bit upset, so, a bit of teenage angst and a bit upset by that. But then I realized that similar to you, it's now a choice. I actually have other choices, and I don't have to be the mother that I had. I get to choose. And then I babysat for so many families, specifically because I was just fascinated by this whole idea of, wow, every family's so different. And they're making different choices every day of how they raise children. And the reason I actually did childcare qualifications and then teaching qualifications is I got really obsessed with this idea of how do you be a good mum, and I had no real idea of what that looked like. And so went and studied it, but it was very similar to what you said around, now I can make a choice and I can be different. And, wow, there are loving families, and that's what I'm going to now, going to aim towards that. So it's interesting how there's kind of these little moments in your life that are such, big turning points that direct you in a different direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And kids, they certainly direct you.
Yeah, yeah. I can't imagine being a mum at 17. I was 27, and it was challenging enough at 27. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
You then went on, you've gone on to do such amazing things. You've stepped into leadership roles, such as you've been a councillor, you're the deputy mayor, you're a CEO, and as I read out earlier, you're the first female president for the Sutherland Shire Football Association. What did it feel like, I guess, walking into spaces like that when no one looked like you in those spaces? And how was it powerful for you to break those barriers for yourself, and I guess build some confidence around your skill set, and also show examples for people, I suppose, like your daughter?
Yeah, look, it's massive. When you say it like that, I feel overwhelmed myself. Look, it felt quite intimidating, to be honest with you. Walking into a space where, you kind of go, how did I even make it here? Like, I have this real kind of like every day waking up imposter syndrome, going, how did I get here? And am I actually meant to be here? And trying to push that imposter syndrome out of my head, that I actually am making a difference and I'm doing it intentionally. Often I was the only woman on the SSFA executive committee for 7 years, but I certainly didn't feel like that. I felt like I was being heard and listened to, so I had a great group of men allies around, so that was lovely. But I do know that, people looked at me different, and I had some challenges within my first year on the SSFA that no other president has ever had. But it wasn't, to me, like, every time I stepped into a room where I didn't fit that mold, I thought, well, I've got women and girls and men and young children and other people that are all looking out for someone to be that first, because someone has to go first, right? So someone has to kind of change the picture of what leadership looks like. I am a massive believer that every single person is born as a leader. We all have leadership in us. It's just how we lead and what opportunities we go for and what choices we make. And so, when I think about being the first female president, I was the right person for the job. It wasn't just a personal milestone. It was something that I think, as a volunteer player, young girl, they should be able to know if they want to do something, they can do it.
Yeah. You also live with a rare disease that few people understand. How has navigating an invisible illness shaped the way you lead, listen, and see the battles that other people are carrying?
Living with a rare disease gives me this level of empathy that is deeper than anything in my life, honestly. Like, when people can't see my pain, and I'm carrying this pain every day, I learn to kind of listen differently and look at others and become aware that everyone has a story. Every behaviour or bad day or silence or even the smiles and the happiness, there's always something behind that, because I live with FDMAS, and it is something I respect that invisible, because they're the struggles that those people, they don't talk about. But it really has taught me to lead. To be honest, I'm learning every day on this space, because, I don't honour my energy as much as I should. I kind of need to lead more sustainably, but I don't. I throw myself headfirst in. So it's about just, listening to my body, and leading with empathy, so that those people out there who are living in silence with many conditions, I want them to feel seen and listened to.
Yeah. You said that your greatest achievement isn't a title, but the people who now believe they can be something because they saw you go first. When did you first realise that your story carried that kind of impact?
It was probably actually when I sat up at, there's many times, right? Like, there's many times where I've gone, oh, wow, people are actually listening or I'm having an impact. But it was started because, like, for example, I spoke at your International Women's Day. And I was so surprised that people had actually said, I was looking forward to hearing from you. And yet I, as an imposter syndrome, you heard my struggles. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm meant to be here talking alongside everywhere else. But I realized when I was elected as a councillor and when I was speaking to so many community members and people that were saying, you know, I did this because I believed in it because you did it too. I was like, oh, okay, my leadership isn't about overcoming something or, you know, my story. It was like, okay, I have permission to use this now and to have these women kind of look up to me and go, you're actually someone we want to aspire to work towards doing this, and can you give me some guidance? And I'm like, oh, okay, that was my moment to realize that I actually should speak a little bit louder on the topics that, you know, I really truly believe in.
Yeah. Now let's talk about your work at Tender Loving Care. So I mean, you really do work every day to look to transform people who are overlooked, and really work with them to become valued community members. Now you're more in charge of the aged care and working in the aged care side of things, and have been working around moving from just providing service to really thinking about quality of life for your consumers and participants. What's that transformation look like, and how has your experience helped you to be able to, I guess, see it from the participant or consumer's point of view as well?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question, Tania. When you think about like everything we do needing to be an impact that is positive on others, and when you think about like my chaotic upbringing, we kind of heard a little bit about, you know, who I am and the leadership style that I have. When we think about disability and aged care, we're talking about some of the most vulnerable people within our communities, and a lot of the time it gets focused in on the funding and the service delivery. So what service do these people need to be able to live comfortably in their own homes? And there's so many buzzwords out there, but it's like quality life to me is moving from tasks to people. So we move away from saying it's like service delivery and task related to people centered. And a lot of the time we talk about people centered, but it's, you know, you've got to live it and actually work towards it. So here at Tender Loving Care, every day I talk about, you know, instead of what service can we provide, you start to think about, well, what life do they want to live, and what would I want my parents and my grandparents and my loved ones to do? And you start to think about dignity, you know, and what's real choice and control. It's not just saying you have choice and control. It's actually having that real choice and collaboration and meaningful opportunities for people. So that means listening and not just doing. It's listening and acting and seeing the whole human, not just as cases or packages or, you know, funding models. It's actually looking at what can I do to support this person to have a quality of life with connection, safety, you know, growth, community, not just hours of support. And I feel like when you see people that way, everything changes and you start to deliver something holistic for the person, regardless if they're living with a disability or elderly or just calling up and needing someone to talk to.
Yeah, I love that. When I first started working in the disability space, I was really confused about this concept of providing service. And I think because I came from an early childhood setting where you take a child where they are on the day, you don't try to make a 3-year-old act like a 5-year-old. You know, a 5-year-old comes in or a 3-year-old comes in, hasn't had a sleep. You just deal with how they present on the day. There's very little expectation, and you just have to figure out how to meet their needs. And a lot of their needs are unverbalized. So you have to be really good at reading them, knowing them, seeing their cues, looking at the way their parents, even if their parents are there for 3 seconds, reading how they came into the room and were they stressed, and is, you know, you have to really focus on the person and how they present in that moment. And I think when I then started working with adults with disability, and when that wasn't the focus, when it was like, oh, she has X disability, so we do X, it was like, well, surely the disability is just part of the person, and we still need to meet their whole needs. They still need to, you know, have exercise. They still need to have connection. They still need to be valued. And I think it's the reason I started working with children with special needs and adults as well, was really to try and fill that gap, that kind of meeting a human's needs kind of came. I found that quite easy to read a need. And it's amazing that isn't actually the norm, that somehow maybe it's, you know, the regulation or the legislation, or, you know, I'm sure there's a reason for it, but we're so busy on providing supports that look a certain way, that are billable under a certain item, that we stop forgetting that their disability, or even if, you know, if they don't have a disability and they're older, that it is all just parts of the human that all need addressing in some way.
Yeah, and I think that's really the challenge. You kind of touched on it there, Tania, where you've got this highly regulated area with a funding model that you're supposed to be working towards, and to holistically approach disability and elderly care, you need to be able to manage the whole ecosystem with that person collaboratively for what their needs are. And I feel like the funding model for both areas is kind of like you're trying to do the goals orientated, and then as an organization you're trying to support them to access supports out so that will help them. But then that person, how do they feel? They've now got like 20 different service providers coming and supporting them in their living needs. Do they feel that they still have choice and control? Because the regulation means that you've got to then put in who's coming, what it means, all the paperwork. And to me, I think we always have to go back to that empathy piece and putting yourself into the shoes of that person and saying, it's not just about how much money you have. We will help you. We just need to work out a way of doing that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Give to Gain is the theme for International Women's Day 2026. What does that mean to you in the context of your life?
It's the story of my life. I think that like when I think about giving, right, to be honest, like give to gain, you kind of go, well, that sounds like, you know, you're giving something that's transactional. It is not transactional. You know, when you think about giving, to me, it's not a charity. Giving is leadership, right? When I give, I see value. People who have rarely felt valued, I'm giving to them. I feel like it's a gain that I see someone else benefiting. It's not a gain transactionally. And I think, you know, it really means to me everything I live for. So I actually was really excited that it was hashtag give to gain. And I didn't know until you told me, by the way. But anyway, because I live it every day.
Yeah, I love it too. I think it's so perfect for the care sector because we naturally are giving, and that just fills our cup so much. And I guess that's what it is for me. It's giving as a way to contribute, which ultimately fulfills what we need as humans ourselves. When you look at the woman you are now, the leader, the CEO, the mother, the advocate, what would you tell your 17-year-old self who was just beginning her journey?
It's going to be okay. No, I would tell her a number of things. And I try and tell my daughter, who's now 28, and I told her when she was 17, you're going to be okay. When I think about how broken I was and how chaotic my life was, I'd probably tell myself, you are not broken. And I think that I would also talk about the fact that the world I am about to build, which is you're about to build, will be kinder and bigger than anything that you could possibly imagine. And you're allowed to be there, that you're worthy, and you will survive. And one day you're going to be amazing.
Yeah, I love that. What message do you want women listening to carry with them as they shape tomorrow in their own communities?
For women that are listening, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing. Take that courage to speak up, support each other. It's so important as women, we support each other, speak kindly, don't judge, share any opportunities, and lift someone else up that you see, because you will be something.
I love that too. Finally, if there's people listening today who wanted to get in touch and find out more about the work that you do, or just have questions for you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn under Laura Cowell. You can reach out to me at Tender Loving Care at my email address, lcowell@tenderlovingcare.com.au. You can find me on socials, just look up Laura Cowell. Happy to reach out to you. And I'm really grateful that you wanted to chat to me today, Tania.
Of course, I always love hearing your story. It's always so inspiring to hear about the amazing things you're doing and to see them in action as well. It's a privilege. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Tania.
Wasn't today's guest amazing? Imagine being in a room with over 100 women like her. That's our 2026 International Women's Day events, happening across Western Sydney, Gold Coast, Adelaide, and Perth this March. You'll meet women building businesses you want to learn from. Leaders are solving problems you're facing right now, and the kind of people who become your text at midnight support system. That's not networking, that's give to gain. Find your event at taniagomez.com.au. I'll be there, and I hope you will be too.